This is International Master Eric Kislik. Today we're going to look at the game between Liren and Gukesh, played in the World Championship. Today was game one, and the underdog Liren came up strong. Ding, 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 we got a winner. But, the next game's starting very soon, so you never know what's going to happen. But I like the way Liren played. He played very bravely, played very valiantly. We can jump straight into it. So Gukesh started the game with e4. I wrote that finally the match is here. We've been waiting a long time. A lot of us are friends with Grandmaster Kevin Go, who arranged basically the whole match. So pretty amazing match that they're having in Singapore. Great coverage. So everything is going really, really well. So Gukesh plays e4. He's been a flamethrower with e4, and he want to keep trying to punish his opponents. So Ding played e6. I really didn't find many games of Ding in the database. Most of the games were from 2013, 2012. Now, of course, there was Game 7 of the World Championship match in 2023 last year against Ian Nepomniachtchi, but he lost that game in the Tarrasch French, so I was surprised to see him play this. But, the beauty of really deep preparation in the French is that you can basically say, well, you know what? I have a draw in all of my analysis. Doesn't look like white really has anything. And some of the lines are very long and deep lines, but it looked like he had done fantastic homework to prepare for this game. All right, so d4, white creates the ideal pawn center, totally normal French defense main line. d5, as usual, Liren challenges the ideal pawn center. Knight c3. Knight f6, and now bishop g5 is a common move, but e5 was played. The Steinitz French. Knight fd7. Now, a really big battle is what happens with this cramping pawn in the 5th rank. Is it going to be really strong and annoying and cramping black's pieces, or is white going to be able to have more space and build behind it? f4, main move, of course. I said white pushes on the king side, following the principle of gaining space on the side where his central pawns point, since he generally has more space there. Somewhat funny story. Well, maybe not that funny, but what I always think of is when I was starting out in chess, I remember hearing, oh, well, play on the side of the board where your pawns point. But then it's like, well, what if my pawns point this way and this way? Where do I play then? Well, it's central pawns, because that's kind of conferring this space advantage there created by the, pointing pawns of d4 and e5. So that was something I only realized much later on. All right, so Liren plays c5. Standard break. I mean, you have to challenge the center. The really big question is white going to be able to consolidate the center? That's really the essential question in these Steinitz French positions. I won a lot of games from the white side. I even beat at least one grandmaster. I think 2 in classical games. From the black side, I played the Steinitz French. I beat an IM. I don't think I beat a GM playing it, but I only played it around 5 or 6 times. But I had very good results from both sides of the board. I think part of it comes down to, are you really disciplined about supporting your center from the white side, and are you really disciplined from the black side about challenging it? And Liren was definitely disciplined in challenging the center. All right, so knight ce2. Bit of a rare move, but the simplest explanation is, why is he playing knight ce2 instead of the standard knight f3? Well, the reason is that the standard knight f3 has really long lines that typically end in draws, very common in correspondence. And, this tends to lead to fresher play, and he probably thought he'd get the opportunity to try to outplay Liren here. So I think that's exactly what happened. So I said he was intending to shore up the center with c3, making d4 safe for a very long time. But Ding knew exactly what he was doing. Knight c6, c3. In standard fashion, white secures his center. a5, very interesting move. Ding gains his own space on the queen side, simultaneously improving his worst placed piece, his rook on a8. Now it is perfectly useful on its home square. So he's going to play a4, and later he actually plays queen a5, so he makes great use of pushing that pawn, finding a good square for his queen. He also could have just played bishop e7, castle f6, but this is a much more aggressive way of playing. All right, so knight to f3. a4, bishop e3, standard consolidating move. Also, one of the points behind bishop e3 is that white may seriously be thinking about playing d takes c5, knight e d4, kind of freeing this up a bit. Sometimes bishop d3 or bishop e2. That's kind of just a standard way to sort of unravel without having to go bishop g2, which is not bad, but just a different plan. All right, so bishop to e7 by Ding Liren. Ding gets one move closer to castling. Typically, white now would seek to take on c5 and use the d4 square with a minor piece. Now, g4 wasn't a bad move played by Gukesh, but it is a very, very bold flank thrust. So, g4. Very, very interesting move. Certainly loose and fraught with some risk, but if f5 can be played effectively, has the potential to pay off. Also, the other point behind g4 is you're not entirely sure. Is he going to go for f5? Is he going to go for g5? Is he going to go for h4? You don't totally know where he's going to go with that. And here's the thing. If he's able to play h4, maybe he might even play king f2 under certain circumstances. So quite an interesting choice. I did point out here that d takes c5 is a bit of a better move, but kind of following up with what I was showing here, knight e d4, knight takes c5, bishop e2, bishop d7, castle, castle, and black will quickly play f6 after that to challenge the cramping pawn on e5. Say queen c2, take, f6, and this kind of works out nicely. We can go take, rook e8, e5, everything kind of flows in really nicely, so that works out pretty well. Take, bishop f3, rook f8, and black is doing totally fine here. Black also has some interesting ideas, like for example, in some cases I might even be able to go knight e4, sack the pawn, and go e5 and just explode the position. So that's an interesting plan in some cases as well. So g4 was chosen, and here I pointed out that I would have just castled. I would have kind of called the bluff on that a little bit. So let's say g5, b5, knight a5, looking at that c4 square there. Take, also, of course, looking at b3. Bishop to d7, controlling b5 there. Now I go knight c4 and rook c8. But the nice thing for black is that now I have ideas like h4, queen a5. Now I have ideas like this, and then f6 or f5, securing the knight in the center. So if anyone would be better here, it would be black. Black is for choice here. I said this is just a line showing black's pieces flying all over the place. Take. Typical moves, king h1, king h8, rook g1. But black has a very slight initiative here, although the knights are pretty well placed. So queen a5 was played by Ding. Interesting choice. Most likely preparation here. Now bishop g2 was played. That was the first move that I thought was a bit dubious, simply because it's harder to guard against knight b6 to c4 now. This plan just gets harder to stop with the bishop never able to take on c4. So I think queen c2 is a better move, b5, bishop b7. Interesting idea here. I analyzed a really interesting pawn sacrifice here. d4, kind of blasting open this diagonal. Now, I'm not able to win anything, though, because they have the capture with this knight. So I'm not actually winning anything, but I will play take, bishop e4, and now I have this very interesting move where white's king gets caught in the center. So basically in this line, at the cost of a pawn, I get really, really interesting play. Bishop d3, rook d8 coming up next. Yeah, this was a really crazy line I was looking at here. King e1, take, h6, another fun move, and queen a6. So ultimately, a very interesting position. A lot of stuff hanging. A totally crazy position. But, yeah, very, very playable for black, but it would have been most interesting if Gukesh had played this way. All right, so bishop to g2. And, I didn't think a3 was the best move here, simply because you'll see why in the game. But he could have simply gone to immediately occupy the c4 square. So take, knight c4, take here. Now this is tricky. This is tricky for white just because of the you know, the isolated pawns here. With the structure being worse here, this is definitely harder to play than the game. H5, take. Yeah, here I'll just go back with the knight. Go king f8, kind of castle by hand. Yeah, I mean it is a little bit of a strange structure for white to be playing, but yeah, black has the slightly better chances there. So he played a3. Now this was interesting. So you know what b3 threatens? B3 threatens to take and then play the fork. So now black has to take. So now black takes here, and now b4. This was a good choice, but notice what it does. It does weaken the c4 square. And it makes the c3 pawn a backward pawn if he takes with the piece, which he does. So take, and knight b6. Now this was an interesting little moment here, because I discussed this with one IM. He said, yeah, white should definitely play knight b5 and bishop f1. Yeah, completely the right idea. Basically, just got to control that c4 square so that jumping into c4 doesn't really do anything special. So I just go back, bishop d7. Now, I did analyze, kind of in typical fashion, like I was analyzing the d4 pawn sack before. I did analyze the d4 pawn sack again here, with the idea of coming in with bishop c6. So I go bishop c6. I'm kind of banging everything around here. I'm going to go f6 later. So I analyzed kind of a cool line here. So bishop h4 check, king f1. I play f6. Notice that knight is still pinned on that diagonal. Rook to d1. Take. Going into the ending here. Take, castles, knight d5. Yeah, now I got a good deal of pressure here. b5, hitting that bishop. Take. Rook b8. As you can see, extremely forcing line, but a number of targets to attack. Rook takes g4. Play h5. Yeah, I mean this is a really interesting ending here. With 2 rooks, a bishop, and 4 versus 2 rooks, a bishop, and 4. But, you know, very slightly favors white. But you can definitely see that in this line. If black may have to play a really aggressive move like d4, this is exactly what white was dreaming of. Because, you know, in a game, it's easy to kind of bail out on playing d4 and say, yeah, I mean, it looks interesting, but do I have enough for the pawn? And I think that black does. But this would have made it very difficult because he has to find that. All right, so white castles, knight to c4. Now, the biggest problem here for white is, does he actually get a real threat in? Because the whole point was to try to get an h4 somewhere, or g5 or something. But not really obvious that we're going to get something here. So bishop to d7. And I was also thinking that knight takes d4 could be played here, and then bishop to d7, but it's completely fine. So bishop to d7. Now, the interesting point of taking on d4 first would be to decoy the knight on f3 so that it can't go to d2, because this knight is crucial. This is a strong centralized piece. I had a chapter in my second book, Chess Logic and Practice, on fighting against strong centralized pieces. This is a strong piece with great influence on the center. So naturally, knight d2, kind of an obvious move. I directly challenge the knight. But from the black side, I go take. I go h5, another typical move, getting us some counterplay on the king side. Take. I can just go bishop c6 next move, trade off that bishop. Yeah, I like that line, bishop c6. Queenside castle, another nice little move here. Take, queen c6, rook h7. Now I'm going to double up the rooks here. Pile up some pressure here. Rook dh8, take, simply come back, and then I can play this. So, really interesting line here. I said white's still up a pawn, but it's really hard to actually use that pawn. I mean, it's very useful in situations like this to ask yourself, well, what's my extra pawn? Well, my extra pawn is that pawn over here. Is it actually going anywhere? No, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So, it would make sense for black to keep the queens on the board. And yeah, I mean, you could argue white is practically a tiny bit better here. So that's an argument for taking on d4, perhaps a move earlier. But queen e2, yeah, you sort of just get the feeling he doesn't have that concrete of a plan here. So that was my problem with that. Yeah, so now he takes. take knight b2. Nice little move. You can see all the pressure that we have on the backward c3 pawn. Queen e3, rook c8. Now, very important point here, very important idea defensively, is to try to defend from the side. And what I mean by that is defending from the side with a heavy piece. So bishop e1 and rook f3 is a really natural plan. So I like just going bishop e1. Now, one of black's ideas is to try to freeze the whole king side. Try to go h5 at the right time, kind of clog this all up, and just make it so that, all right, all the play is over here. But it's not actually that simple to turn this into anything. So there's that rook f3 move I was mentioning, defending from the side. Typical but underappreciated move. Now I go bishop b6. Castles. Yeah, this looks like a better setup. Notice the efficiency of the pieces here. This looks better. So the knight on b2 looks kind of annoying, but it's not really doing that much there. So let's say here, take, rook c7. Yeah, queen a8. Black's doing fine. I'll just say equal here. So let me go back. All right. So rook a c1 was played. Yeah, a little bit passive. Now a really nice sequence was played here. Also notice the point of the rook f3 move. It stops the maneuver played in the game. Queen c4. Really nice move. Really nice move. I did give knight b6 an exclamation mark and a5, a4. Those were very nice moves. But kind of deeper in the middle game, this was the first move I really praised. I wrote, Ding cleverly prepares to challenge white's strong centralized queen. With the queens off the board, black would be better due to white's backward c3 pawn and his lack of an equivalent weakness in black's position. So this is related to the chapter Playing Without Weaknesses in Chess Logic and Practice, my second book. And I essentially talked about how, well, if you have a complex middle game and they have one weakness and you have none, well, they're simply stuck defending their one weakness and you get to do whatever you want, just kind of play against it, pile up. So the play becomes so much easier for you when you have no weaknesses and they have one, and they don't have any targets to attack or anything to actually pile up on. So this is where it certainly gets much more difficult for Gukesh to play. And it's a very important defensive resource to be able to trade off the opponent's best attacking pieces. What's the best attacking piece? Well, the queen on e3. Not only is it in the center, but it is supporting, the possibility of f5. Also, after f5, what might be played? f5, f6. And if f6 is played, that might weaken the h6 square. Suddenly the queen is swinging in here. One phrase that one national master I know likes is the serpentine queen, the slithering queen. I also like referring to the Zorro queen, kind of like Antonio Banderas in the movie, drawing a Z with the queen when you kind of cut through the opponent's position sometimes. But yeah, well, the problem here for Gukesh is he wasn't able to keep his stable queen there. So not only is it his best attacking piece, but it looks awesome right in the center of the board. Problem is, he's not able to put a rook on the d file because that knight on b2 is so annoying. I like the phrase nettlesomeness. That was a phrase used by Grandmaster Jonathan Rowson to describe the playing style of Magnus Carlsen. Nettlesomeness, basically the most annoying possible playing style. And the knight on b2 is actually disrupting white's play. And, there was a Dvoretsky article. I don't know anyone else who's ever talked about it, or I've never really even spoken to another titled player who read the article and discussed it with me. But Dvoretsky had an article where he talked about leaving annoying pieces in the opponent's camp. Now, someone might say, well, why would you do that? Isn't that dangerous? Well, if the piece clearly is not going to be trapped and it's actually doing useful things, it all comes down to utility. Is the piece doing something useful? Is the piece safe? And if it's annoying and safe, then a lot of the times we'll focus on other things, like, castling, bringing in other pieces, playing pawn breaks, piling up on weaknesses. So queen c4, he's heading straight into that d3 square, and Gukesh has to find something to do. So f5. Gukesh plays his intended break, going all out, but Ding is able to powerfully offer a queen exchange, completely nullifying the threat. Yeah, I mean, here I think was the time to try to bail out. And I like to say, when your position is frail, don't fail to bail. So the position's getting a little frail, getting a little shaky here. And, let's say queen d3, the intended move. Bishop f1, just provoke it. Take. And I do, in fact, like that bishop. Remember what I was talking about, the bishop controlling the c4 square. That's the weak square. And it's typical that if you have a backward pawn, very often the square in front of it is a weak square. So knight c4, chop. When I go g5, I try to isolate that pawn in the center. So I do have some different things I can play against. I have this backward pawn. I can swing the rook up here. I have this potential target. So definitely a part of the play here. Bishop c6, d4 check. Yeah, my rook is hit, so I play rook takes c3 here. Take. And I said black is a little bit better here with the bishops. So a very interesting way to play, but definitely white's best chance. So f5, bit of a questionable move. And also remember what I was saying. When I was first looking at this, I was thinking, well, what are my different threats? And one of the most interesting ones is, in fact, to maybe go f6. So that is a really interesting choice. And part of the problem with white's setup here is, it would have been ideal if the rook could have maybe come to e1 potentially instead of c1, but he's not really in a great position to attack. And here we go, queen d3. Excellent move by Ding Liren. And one thing I'll say is that the Grandmaster organizing the match, Kevin Go, he really strongly spoke out against the people who were giving Ding Liren a hard time. Sometimes this happens in online spaces. Like, there might not be that much going on at a certain time, so people just kind of start saying bad stuff about people, or like, oh, he's washed up, or this or that. I mean, he's a phenomenally strong player, and he's doing very well. He's done very well against Gukesh. And, he not only had a physical injury, but he had, pretty intense psychological problems for a period of time. So, when you have the physical and the mental, it's very, very hard to deal with that. I remember he had a biking accident a while ago. I mean, I don't know exactly how serious it was. I know he went to the hospital. But, who knows? Maybe he has chronic pain. I mean, I don't want to speculate, but Grandmaster Kevin Go just said, hey, just focus on the chess. It's better if people aren't saying, really bad things about any of the top players in the world, especially if they haven't done anything to anybody or violate any rules or anything like that. All of these players have essentially devoted most of their life to chess. So, I thought it was really, really nice to see that Grandmaster Kevin Go, was very supportive of Ding Liren, especially during a hard time for him. And so many people were piling up on him. And, here's the other thing. If you're not a professional chess player, it might seem like, we can just insult these players or whatever. But I will say this. I mean, if it was like Kevin Durant or something, or some basketball player, you might be able to say, well, they make $20 million a year or 50 or whatever. But with chess players, not exactly. So, the other thing is, chess players might be the most famous people in the world who you can actually speak with most of them. I mean, for example, I remember the early days of Facebook. I would just speak to like every single grandmaster, even in the top 10. And I met plenty of them. I have met Ding Liren. I met Ding Liren. We had a conversation when we were in Reykjavik. I have a photo with Ding Liren. I'm not going to put it on the screen, but yeah, I've met Ding Liren. Very nice guy, extremely nice guy. So I thought it was nice that one person was supportive of that. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, the chess world is all about a love of chess. So everything else is kind of a waste of time. And I honestly believe that 95% plus of people who watch chess content are hoping to get better at chess. So if you see anyone, being really negative about like Ding or something like that, I would just say, hey, let's not do that. Let's just focus on the chess. It's better for everybody. So anyway, Queen D3 played by Ding, very nice move. And Gukesh tried to keep the queens on the board, which I think was a bad idea. Now, I would have tried G5. I could play G6. That was the idea, to try to plug everything here. Take, bishop H3. I can castle. I have a nice little move here with rook F3 at the end. Bang, 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 rook F3. Take, knight takes. That's kind of a nice move. Here. A lot of weaknesses. Hard to defend. Bishop C5. Now that is a nice defensive move as well, trying to attack the rook on F3. Take. Now I have a couple choices. I like bishop takes G5 here. And bishop E7. Notice how I'm kind of eyeing that C3 pawn here. So this does look like black is much better. And white is struggling to defend. But yeah, I mean, with only five pawns left on the board, if a couple pawns come off the board, this could get pretty drawish, and certainly much more drawish than the game. Now, when I was following this, I was thinking, well, what's the idea of Queen E1? There are a couple of ideas. One of them is actually the interesting bishop to E3. Just kind of saying, all right, well, let me just stop bishop G5. Let me just freeze him in his tracks and kick some of his pieces back. There's also another idea of playing bishop to H4. That's another interesting move. Just saying, well, my bishop's blocked by the E5 pawn. The bishop on E7 is a good defensive piece. Let's leave him with his bad bishop and go ahead with that. But beautiful play here by Ding, by the way. Bishop G5. So I didn't even realize this when I was first kind of clicking through this one. When you go through it quickly, or you just kind of pop in at random moments to look at the game. I didn't even realize it's a great prophylactic move, because bishop E3 was a positional idea, positional threat. So excellent move there. Rook C2. There goes rook C4. There goes my hero. He's threatening this. Uh-oh, gotta watch out for that rook on C2. It's a bit vulnerable, because white was looking like he might have time to do something here. Maybe kick the bishop back, kick something back, but he just doesn't have time. So H4, another nice move, bishop F4. The bishop finds a stable home in white's position. The nettlesomeness of black's pieces in the white camp is apparent, latching onto everything in the center, making it hard for white to abandon any important posts. Yeah, actually, one person said, did you invent the word latching? I'm like, well, I didn't invent it in the English language, and I've read it in plenty of endgame books, so no, I didn't invent that word. That's like one of the craziest things someone's ever told me in chess. Like, are you inventing common English words? No, I'm just playing chess and using useful words that other people have taught me. And, the thing about latching onto a pawn, is that it's a direct strategy. I'm describing a strategy. It's a verb. So, it's actually very valuable. The funny thing is, the guy who asked me that question would have been a better endgame player if he knew what latching was and read Dvoretsky's work on it and analysis and articles. But I digress. Let's go back to the game. So Queen B1. Interesting try here. The problem is these pieces just kind of cut through the position so much. What exactly is he supposed to do? Because he needed to defend. Remember, there's that rook takes. There's that rook takes D4 idea in various lines. So he just takes on C3, steals that pawn. Take. Now here was one slip up. This was the one slip up. Ding should have taken on E6 with the bad bishop. By the way, which is a kind of common thing for black. Less so in this opening. I would say I've seen it a lot in the Najdorf, in the poison pawn variation, where there's some f takes e6 line. You take with bishop takes e6. Especially in the delayed poison pawn with h6, bishop h4. That's a really common maneuver. But yeah, e5 pawn's going to fall in this line. I'll just pick off that pawn, pick off that bad boy over there. Yoink. I take that one. And yeah, just notice how everything is guarded here. And here we go. The same thing as in the game. Queen c4, challenging the queen. Take, take. b6. Yeah, and I can just go here. I can just go here. So this once again looks excellent. You know, this is what you can do when you're up 2 pawns. When you're up 2 pawns, you got some leeway. You know, he was up 3, gave up 1, winning the position up 2. So I'll show you why this was a mistake. 92, take, take, take. Now, you do wonder what Gukesh may have missed here. I think what he missed was rook f3 and queen f1, perhaps, as the maneuver. Or, I mean, I'll tell you from a practical player's perspective, sometimes you've sacrificed 2 pawns and you just don't believe you can sacrifice the 3rd pawn. But sometimes you really just have no choice. So I would argue he had no choice. So he played queen c2. I said Gukesh failed to bail when his position was frail. So this was the best move. Notice that f8 square. That is a key invasion square. Also, if you think about bishop pair strategy, what are you supposed to do with the bishop pair? Increase the scope of the unopposed bishop. That dark squared bishop is unopposed. There's no dark squared bishop for black. Let's go for the f8 square. So there's the 3rd pawn, rook f3, queen f1. Now that's tricky because of the mating idea. So he has to play a move like this, queen f2, bishop a7. I'm trying to sneak in with the queen here. Ah, yes, queen a4, queen c5 check. I'm sneaking in. I'm going bishop h3. And now rook f8. There are a couple other alternatives here. But I basically concluded that white has so much activity with the 2 bishops here. Well, here I do give it up to win a pawn back. Take, take, take. Here I can play the check, seeing through, you know, the pinned bishop on d7. Queen e5. Take, take. Or sorry, check and then take. Check and then take. But yeah, basic problem being here that it's just really hard to play with this exposed king. Obviously, there's a threat of mate in 1. You can't allow that. So, you know, I played out various endings like this, and yeah, I do think Gukesh would have been able to draw the queen ending most likely down a pawn. Remember the same question I posed earlier. What is the actual pawn that I'm down? Well, it's this pawn. How are you going to use it? Well, it's going to be very hard to turn that into a super strong pass pawn, especially with the exposed king. So let's go back to the game, queen c2. Now notice what Ding does. Challenges the queen. White's queen faces constant harassment. Queen d2. Yeah, I said practical chances are called for. Going to the endgame, of course, loses. Yeah, we can just play through a few moves if he went into the ending. Say I play bishop e5. I'm opening up king d7. Can go e5, king d6. Yeah, pretty good centralization. Got everything guarded here. Yep, just defend the pawn after they're threatening this. Go d4. King c6, king b6. Yeah, that's clearly winning up the 2 pawns. All right, so queen d2. Now, I thought this was the funniest move of the game. It's move 31. What does Ding do? Ding, ding, ding. Castling is allowed. You are the winner. You castled. So let's not forget about castling on move 31. It's a great move. Wonderful chess. So bishop d4 was played. Now, he did almost create some dangerous threats here, again, with his unopposed bishop. He was very close. He was very close to creating some threats. So, you know, I understand why he didn't trade queens, because he was hoping to get more chances here. Beautiful winning sequence here by Ding Liren. Knight d3, only move. Queen e3. And now he plays rook takes, bishop takes. And only move, of course, because we're in this pin, is e5. And look at the sideways pin. Beautiful, beautiful pinning action on the g4 pawn. Just fantastic. So bishop takes d3, queen takes d4. That's game. That is the game. So he goes bishop takes e5, queen takes g4 check. So now, notice another thing that we have here. Now the bishop gets to swoop in. Bishop comes into the e4 square. that's going to totally nullify all of the power of the bishop pair here. So, yeah, those 2 extra pawns, now that you have a pass pawn plus the pawn on g7, now it's really gonna make a big difference here. Yeah, if he does this, I take another. Well, okay, he takes the a3 pawn. Yes, I do eventually take that pawn. Queen e6, queen e7, safe move. Bishop f5, queen c5, and then check, and it's over. Yeah, it's 3 pawns. That's 3 pawns, so that is decisive. Bishop f5. Yeah, I said Ding's pieces are ferocious. The bishop pair is dominated well. Yeah, of course, if he trades queens, you just swap and bishop e4. Total domination here. I mean, just fantastic minor pieces. Fantastic minor pieces. So bishop g3, bishop e4, kind of plugging everything. Yeah, I liked what he did here. h6. Ding, of course, gives his king luft, not allowing any last-second tricks after a masterful performance. And, of course, we're not going to allow queen e8 mate. So... Ding, of course, has his eyes open for the threats here. So just go king h7, bishop h3, win queen d1. Now of course I have the threat of mate in 1, queen h1, goes bishop d6 to clear it out, check. Yeah, and Ding just says, yeah, why not? Why don't I just take this? So if here, I go queen c2. And now there was one kind of funny thing. I mean, there is this pin of the pawn, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So he goes king h8. I guess he was just waiting for that move. He was waiting for that move. So if he goes queen takes e4 here, queen f2 check, saving the queen with tempo, and the game is over. We take the queen on the next move. So beautiful game by Ding. Yeah, this is turning into an amazing match. I don't want to speak too soon about any of this, but I do see that Gukesh is still considered the favorite in the match. I think the game that's about to start very soon is really potentially going to tell us a lot about the match. If Ding is able to squeeze and press with white, he played very well in a lot of the white games in the previous match against Nepomniachtchi. So if he can just kind of keep up the pressure that he's had, because he made a lot of pawn sacrifices where the computer says equal, 0.00, nothing there in theory, but keep in mind, what if I'm getting something? What if the computer says it's equal, but I have a crazy attack with 5 pieces in play versus 2? Well, all the pressure is on the opponent to defend, even if the computer can defend it. Well, what if I have a crazy central majority that's just going, just running up the board? Well, that's exactly how Ding won one of his games last time. So we shall see, but for game 1, we do have a winner. Great to see Ding back. Ding, ding, ding. We do have a winner.